So, welcome to the Evolving Outlier. I'm just so excited that you said yes. Just a heads up, this podcast is dedicated to people who feel they sit just outside of the in group, who don't mind the journey of discovery and change, and who just don't want to be bound by religious rules and foolishness. And that's really the point, to hear people's stories about how perhaps you have felt like you weren't in that group, whatever that group is. Have you noticed that they don't have an address? They don't have a website. They don't have an Instagram account.
No.
But we give a lot of attention to them and they.
Yes.
And not the pronouns of our community, right? But the infamous they that have been there from history, who make us feel like we're not in.
Yeah.
Or we lack something, or we don't have the resources. So just a heads up, family, this is Miss Angele Cade. We have been friends. I just found out for like lots and lots and lots of years now.
Yes.
Longer than I had even thought. It's moving into the, wait, how old is your son?
He's 13, so yeah,
So
over a decade.
Yeah, it's over 10 years. But I'm grateful that you're here because I know a little bit of your story, particularly with your son
Yeah.
and your business, Executives on the Go.
Uh-huh.
We've worked together.
Yes.
You've helped our organization. You've helped all my friends' organizations be better and be in compliance with all the government agencies. And I really wanted to invite you on to just share your perspective on being an evolving outlier, of being successful in spite of.
Yes. Well, no, first of all, thank you for inviting me. I consider it
Pleasure.
an honor and privilege to share the space with you. You are a dynamic woman of God, and I just love your work. I love who
Thank
you
you.
are. I love how you flow, and just to be in the space is amazing. As far as being an outlier and in terms of my own journey in business, I think the feeling of being on the outside is something that for me was, there for a very long time. It isn't, there's like moments in my life where it shows up and it's stronger, and there's this loneliness, and there's this feeling that, there is, that I'm alone, or there's no one else like me, or no one else understands. And sometimes it's true, and sometimes it's a story I made up.
Yep, a
right?
narrative.
And so either way, whether it's true or a story, for me, it feels real.
Yeah.
And so being able to deal with at that moment, how to get through it so that I can accomplish the goal or execute the objective, that's where, the kind of work in my own mind and work on myself comes into play.
How did you tell me some areas in which you felt like you weren't quite in the space that was in?
So, it's funny because there's some highlights in my life where that happened. And so I would have to say that it started when I was really young, when I came to this country for the first time.
Okay, wait, tell the people where you're from.
I'm originally from St. Kitts.
Oh, come on, island girl.
Small
You
island girl.
girl.
And so I came here by way of Canada because a lot of us, go to New
Got
York,
it.
Florida, or Canada. And so my family ventured to Canada. And then as a teenager, I came here to the States, preteen. I came here to the States. So as you can imagine, probably one of the most difficult times in your kind of like growing life, trying to fit in
Right.
and not quite fitting in. So that was really my first experience of I don't quite belong, right? Because culturally what happened was, before I opened my mouth, I'm just, hey, you're just, this Black girl.
Right.
And, to all of the other races, I was just, that was my category. And then to all the Black kids, it was like, well, you talk different. You act different. And so never quite fitting in. And so for me, the first thing that I did was I tried to seek a space where I could fit in.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when we do that, it's not in the right place.
Right.
We're seeking love. We're seeking a place to feel
all the wrong places.
all the wrong places. Exactly. And so during that time for me, it was, I sought out, I ran away from home.
No.
Yeah, I ran away from home. I had a strained relationship with my mom. I ran away. I had a friend that lived off of Firestone and Hickory in Watts. and I ran away there, and I was determined to fit in and be a part of that crowd, and
Mm,
prove that I was, enough.
yeah.
And so in doing that, I ended up getting involved with a gang. I ended up a week
Wait,
before.
wait, 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 wait. Okay, we got to pause there. We got to pause there. Nothing about you sitting here or everything I know about you with your proper English and your prim self and your brilliant self says gang.
I've heard that said before, but I have to attribute that to God, and I have to attribute that to the testimony that he's given me, because statistically I should have never graduated from high school. I had
Wow.
all F's and one D, and the running joke is that my D was in PE because I got dressed every now and again. But at the time, I was, affiliated with a gang, and I ended up getting shot a week before my 14th birthday.
Okay, are you guys listening to this? This is amazing. I had no idea. Just so you know, I had no idea. Keep going. Whoa.
Yeah, I just, it's a part of who I am, and it's a part of the evolution of how I got to this place, but it really is one of the pivotal moments in my life where where really God slowed me down, and where in this occurrence I got shot upper right chest. I just, at that point had to make some decisions that if I
Mm.
continued down that road, I was going to die.
What was appealing about the gang?
I mean, as you mentioned, it was a place, as far as the crowd, there was love, there was there was a camaraderie, there
Yeah.
was a welcome, there was a space where I didn't, I could just be, and I was just accepted, and I felt what I thought was love, and I felt what I thought was kind of a pseudo, family, or a place where I
Yeah.
was cool or accepted or could
Right.
defend or could be hard or could be, and could act out, and they would still, have my back. And so all of those things coupled together kind of made this lifestyle that was not that was not the best for any young girl or young person, especially during that era. And so I just experienced so much hurt and so much loneliness. And I realized at the end of the day, it really stemmed from a lot of my mommy issues. It
Mm.
stemmed from this idea that I wanted to fit in, I wanted to be accepted, I wanted to be cool. But in the midst of it, when I was slowed down, in the midst of it, when it happened, it really created this crossroads in my life where I had to make a hard decision. My parents decided that we needed to move. I changed schools. Like, everything about my life changed. And there was this power that I was given to make a different decision.
Got it. So gangs, which are not as prominent today as they were, 20 years ago,
Yeah.
where you had to check what you were wearing in
Yeah.
what part of the city, right? Red, blue, Grape Street, purple, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the element of belonging,
Yeah.
right, is so strong.
Yeah.
Uh, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to be accepted
Absolutely.
and has that need for belonging and family. And in the absence of it in our natural realm of life, we will seek it in places that are not good, that are not healthy, that are dangerous for our well being and our
Yeah.
mental stability. And so the fact that you came into that and were able to come out of it, is really, to your point, a very, very powerful testimony, one. And then two, sounds like it led you to a crossroads. What was the defining piece? Because at a crossroads, you're at a light,
Mm-hmm.
and you could go left, you could go
Yeah.
right, you could go straight,
Yeah.
right? You could actually make a U-turn. What was the impetus? Getting shot is one piece of it, but there are plenty of people who've been shot
Yeah.
who stayed in gangs.
Absolutely.
What shifted and made you want to make that change?
And I have to say that this is the importance of community,
Mm.
and this is the importance of having people in your life that they see beyond whatever you are showing them at that moment,
Hmm.
and they're looking into your future. They're looking into the
Yes, yes,
possibility. They're looking into the eyes of what is possible for you, and they're speaking to that,
yeah,
and they're not concerned with the shell or with the image that you're presenting at that moment.
right.
I remember sitting across from a counselor, and And here I was with a transcript that had all F's and one D. And she was talking to me and she said, I have never sat across from a student who so much didn't reflect the paper that I was watching.
Yeah.
She says, I don't, this is incongruent. This isn't making sense to me. And so with everything in her, she sent me off to these classes to sign up. And one by one, every teacher rejected me from the class. They said they didn't have room, they didn't have books, they didn't have seats. Like for whatever reason, they rejected me from the class. And when I came back to her, her only option at the time was to place me in a law and government magnet class. And at that moment, by the time I got to the end of the day, I was in 4 magnet classes. And so what God did was he allowed me to bypass 362 people on a waiting list for the magnet program.
Wow.
And she figured that that was the only place to put me and allowed me to be in the class, which put me in the program, which completely changed my life forever.
Man, that's pretty miraculous in and of itself. I want to jump ahead and say, I'm assuming you succeeded in this program because based on what I know about your success in your life today, had you not taken advantage of that opportunity. And that's one of the things, people say it differently, but when preparation meets opportunity, you can have success. But sometimes when opportunity from somebody else's preparation, potential, and insight,
Yes.
right, places you in a position for opportunity to meet up with you,
Yes.
then success can happen.
Yes, absolutely.
And so sometimes it's not even our doing,
No.
right? It's somebody else's creating a door and allowing us to walk in.
Yeah.
And all we really do is have to do the walking.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that teacher was an amazing inspiration as it relates to having somebody believe in you,
Yes.
right? And open a door for you to then walk through, and then you did the work.
Absolutely. I mean, I went from in that semester, those F's and D, I went to all A's and 1B.
Man.
And I ended up graduating valedictorian of my class. And I remember writing my college essay and giving the testament of what it meant to be shot and go through the path that I went through and be able to experience what I did while I was in high school. And so just taking that opportunity and saying, you know what, I see where I was, but someone else saw what was possible. And at that moment, I didn't even realize I had a choice in the matter. I thought that the script was already laid out. I thought that the book was already written. Like, this is my lot. This is what I've been given. And I'm not going to be any more than what I could see.
Right.
But the possibility is, like, if somebody's willing to show you more, then all of a sudden more is possible.
Right.
And that's what happened.
We were talking about this in an earlier meeting when we were chatting, when I was talking about going to Europe as a kid and having my perspective widen, not knowing that the call of my life later would be to go all around the world doing leadership development. Those small opportunities at critical points in our lives when we don't feel like either we're deserving or capable or have the resources or the education or the looks or all the things.
Yes.
And somebody just literally says, oh, but I think you do.
Yes.
And let me show you.
And it's so funny, fast forward to even in business, I remember early on, we had a particular price point that was, lower. And it was because we had kind of made up the story that, like, this is all we could get, right? Who was going to trust us, or what we were going to offer? Is it enough, or is it valued? And I remember reading a book, and sometimes your influence, it's a person, it's
Sometimes
a book.
It's a good book.
I mean, it could come from anywhere, but just being open.
Mentors come in all forms and fashions. Written, verbal, personal. Yeah, go for it.
And so I remember reading a book, and in the book, basically it said, like, it was talking about your pricing, and it said, you know what? Stop negotiating yourself out of the deal. You are worth it. And it began to speak about the exercise of saying the number and getting comfortable with it. And then not negotiating down, because a lot of times we would say the number and then we'd say, well, let me give you this discount or let me negotiate this down. And I think even the value or the idea that you're worth it, the exercise of even being able to ask for the number is so much, to be said around you thinking you're enough or you're worthy of being in that circle or that class of income. And so it was an exercise we learned really early on, and we stopped negotiating ourselves ourselves out.
That's
And then
good.
all of a sudden, our income began to elevate because we were no longer afraid of asking for the number or questioning our worth
Yeah,
of that number. So,
that's good. I remember being, when I first started coaching people, I
mhm.
got certified at Disney. And so I was like, but I could take this outside of Disney and I could make some more money, right?
Uh-huh.
And, but I remember going and looking at people's web pages and seeing what they were charging and being like, they charge that much? What's their qualifications? And I read through their qualifications, like, well, I have, I have that, and I have that, I have that,
Mhm.
and I have this. But that feeling of I can't charge that, right?
Mhm.
I can't because what is that? What is that thing in us that makes us devalue ourselves and
Yeah.
makes us feel like they have it, but I don't?
Yeah.
And what is it in you that pushed you? The book was an impetus,
Mhm.
but what made you act on it? Because that first time you go, and I'm making up numbers.
Yeah.
Let's change it from 1,000 to 5,000.
Uh-huh.
What what does that feel like, and what pushed you to do it in spite of the previous narrative that sat in your head?
I mean, I think a part of it is, with it, it's mixed with elements of, fear and caution, and you
Hmm.
do it anyway. It's mixed with this idea that let me try and see, let me exercise it. I think all of it becomes part of a muscle
Okay.
that if you don't exercise it or work it out, then it's not going to get strengthened. So the idea is if you want it to get better, if you want it to get stronger, you've got to do the work, you've got to do the pushes, you've got to be able to exercise it. And so for us, it became that. And the moment we got feedback and evidence, and I think that's also a part of it, we're sometimes so busy in the work
Hmm.
that we're not reading the feedback.
Right.
We're not looking
We're
at,
afraid
yeah,
oftentimes of the feedback, right? It's like, okay, wait, what are they saying? What are they saying? And I don't
exactly.
want to know. I don't want to hear. I don't want to see.
But
Don't
sometimes,
nobody
but
tell
most
me.
times it's great.
Right.
And it's like we're blocking ourselves from being able to say, okay, you know what? That feedback is speaking into this area
Yes.
and it's telling me to do more of this.
Yeah.
Or it's telling me that people are enjoying this. Or it's proving my purpose in this.
Got it. That's
And
good.
so being able to read it and say, you know what, I'm open to it, I receive it, and it's telling me the truth about how others are experiencing me.
That's good.
And then the other part also is that we're not responsible for other people's lack in certain
It's
areas.
true.
Because sometimes when people say, I can't do it or I can't afford it, then thinking, well, oh, is it me?
I'm guilty.
No, it's not me.
I'm guilty.
And so being able to let go of the fact that you're not responsible for their deficit, you're not responsible for their lack in that moment. Maybe it's not now, maybe it's later. And when people tell me they can't afford it or it's too much, I say, not a problem.
Right.
I hope that you find the right fit for you. But when you're ready, I'm here.
That's good. That's good. So tell me, how did you, valedictorian, um, how did you get into the current business that you're in, Executives on the Go? How did that happen, and
Oh,
where did that shift happen? And did you foresee that when you were graduating from high school? Because for some people, that would have been a major accomplishment and
hmm,
enough,
yeah.
right? What made more be a part of your narrative?
I'll have to be completely honest with you. A part of my story is really the process of failing forward.
Mm,
I got into this business because I lost everything. And when I go back to it, everything that I did to that moment prepared me for my business because in college, because of like what I experienced,
mhm.
I became a counselor and I worked with a program that focused on the attrition rate of the African American population at UCLA.
Okay.
And so in that program, we did counseling from a holistic perspective,
Hmm.
and that drives the way that I consult.
Got it.
When I'm listening to somebody and they're talking to me about their business, I can't help but be concerned
Right.
about their holistic,
Yep.
aspect of everything that connects to how they do business.
Right.
And we're in a session and they're like, wow, we're talking about credit. Yeah, it has impact on how you
Right.
do business.
Right.
What do you mean, do I have a trust? Yeah, I want to know how you're going to hold your stock. Like, what do you
Right.
mean your house isn't in order? Let's talk about that. I'm bringing up things that are ancillary because all these verticals impact how you do business. But the nature of like that style comes from me counseling in college. When I left college, I worked for an attorney that was that focused on collections.
Okay.
And so my so my experience on skip tracing and piercing the corporate veil comes from being in that firm. And so, you fast forward, I worked for an accountant out here in Encino, and I was a controller for many years. And so the language of the numbers and
Yes.
how to read it came
Yep.
from that experience. And when I was working for this CPA, he was the CFO on a company that was having an IPO. I know lots of acronyms, but he was in this initial public offering, and he left really the focus on his practice. So he left me there, and I was running the office. And then the IPO was so attractive. I mean, they were making so much money. I had $9 million cross my desk in 6 months. So him
Wow.
and the other executives, I mean, they changed addresses and car keys and all the stuff. And I didn't realize they had no idea what they were doing.
Wow.
And they didn't have a proper PPM. They didn't have a bunch of stuff in place. Well, when it came down to it and the SEC got involved, which is a whole nother acronym, that $9 million wasn't enough to even bring their attention because it was so small in the grand scheme of things. So these guys got away with it. There was like a couple of lawsuits, but anyway, he basically let the practice dwindle down. He stopped coming in. So here I was running an office. The principal has disappeared. He's not coming in, and I'm like, what am I going to do? I literally started letting go of the staff piece by piece because there wasn't any more money coming in because
Right.
he wasn't doing a core bulk of the work. Well, I was the main breadwinner. I was there for so long. And so anyway, fast forward, I've literally fired everyone in the office. I'm in there by myself.
Okay.
I call his wife and I'm like, look, I can't keep this up. This has gotten out of hand. He's not coming in. He's not returning my calls. And she's like, Angele, I know you're holding everything down. You're keeping things together. We're going to take care of you. 2 weeks later, crickets, nothing. So I write my letter and I leave the key on the chair, and I go to the labor board and I win my labor board case. And he owes me a month's worth of back pay in penalties and interest. And at this point, I'm at the verge. We've lost our apartment, getting ready to lose a car. I'm moving in with
Wow.
my mother-in-law. Like everything that I didn't want is happening at this moment. And so I go to the labor board, I win my judgment, I take it to an attorney, and the attorney says, Angele, I've seen this before, no problem, I'm going to get you all your money. I'm like, great, redemption. 3 days later, crickets. The attorney's like, Angele, I looked into all this, I thought it was going to be one way. He said, the way all these businesses are structured, I can't get your money. I can't attach him to the debt of this liability. And so I can't get your money. I'm like, I've got everything. I know his accounts. I know his social. I know everything. Get me my money. He's like, well, these are all structured so well. I can't do it. And I said, what are you talking about? I structured them. He says, well, you did a great job. So at that point, the light bulb went off. And I thought to myself, wow, the accumulation of all the experience of developing the structures, managing them, insulating them, the stuff that I learned with the attorney, the stuff I learned with the accountant, the nature of how I was doing the work, it all culminated to me creating these pieces that now not only I couldn't even penetrate to get what was mine.
Wow. You built a fortress that you couldn't get into.
That I couldn't get into. And so there I was in my stupor at my mother-in-law's back room trying to figure out what I was going to do. And there was a client who contacted a vendor who was like, I'm looking for Angele. And so the vendor called me and was like, hey, this client is looking for you. And I'm thinking to myself, I left everything right. I didn't do anything, but let me call them. I put it on the back burner. I think waited a couple weeks and finally called them back. And they said, Angele, I want you to keep doing the work. I know you were the one doing it. You see, I didn't even know the value that somebody would be willing to pay me outside of that core job.
Right.
And so someone else looked for me and said, you know what, we want to pay you directly to keep doing this work for us. And at that point, Executive on the Go started. And it started with me being the executive going out to the clients. That's where it started 20 years ago.
You said something really profound there. The two things. One, you had a Karate Kid wax on, wax off story in the middle of all that where you were being trained,
Uh-huh.
right? Doing somebody else's work,
Yes.
right? And doing it with excellence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great note for somebody listening that when we start, when we're supporting someone else, the way you do it,
Yes.
right, will have an impact on your future
Absolutely.
and how you proceed and the way you build. There's this weird story that just comes to my mind of this guy who wants a house built.
Mm-hmm.
And so he gets this contractor and he says, I want you to make a house. I want it to be great. I'll trust you with the building of it, build it according to your imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And the construction guy or the guy who's asking him, got dirty jeans on and a raggedy t-shirt, doesn't look like much.
Yeah.
And so the guy's like, this guy probably doesn't have a lot of money. I'll just build, something that, he could just call home or whatever. And so he doesn't use the best materials, right? He doesn't use the best craftsmanship. He hires a shoddy team to put everything together because he's like, this guy probably is not even going to be completely good for this, right? So when he gets done, tells the guy I'm done, goes look at it, and the guy's like, this is what you built? He says, yeah. He says, He says, well, I was actually giving you the opportunity to build for yourself. And so the way you built this, right,
Yes.
is yours. You could have had the best, but the effort that you put into it was subpar.
Yes.
And so now you get to have a subpar house because he had no idea that he was really building for himself. And the truth of the matter is sometimes when we're working for somebody else and we're building and we're given opportunities
Yes.
to learn and to grow the way that you just described, you literally were building executives on the go while you were supporting somebody else
Absolutely.
in that work so that when you finally had your own, the level of professionalism, the level of expertise, the level of how you treated your clients, the way you did it with integrity
Yes.
was already built into your structure
Yes.
so that yours, the viability of your own business, right, is so solid because of how you built somebody else's. And I think that's a great lesson out there for somebody. The second thing is to just opportunities to move past your fears and your apprehension, particularly when you feel like you've lost.
Yeah.
And when you say, I'm at my mother-in-law's, you pretty much, I think for a married couple, if it's a situation where it's to your benefit and it's great and it's a mutual decision, no hate on anybody who's living with their mother-in-law. But when you're forced to because you've lost everything and it's not your ideal situation, man, that could be really frustrating and depressing.
Yeah.
But in spite of that, you still forged forward, as it were, and used what you had to then build. What does your company do?
So our company, basically what we do is we focus on the initial structure for a person. And what that means is we do the corporations, the LLCs, the nonprofits, any type of formal structure, even the fictitious business names.
Okay.
So we get clients that come in and they say, look, I have a vision, I have a purpose, I want to get somewhere, and someone told me to, or I heard I should, or Instagram said, whatever it is. We're there to have the conversation so that you can play out the structure and make sure it's the best one for you. So a lot of times we talk to clients about their exit strategy, like what are you building it for, and making sure that it makes sense for you. One thing that you said when you were telling the story, which was a beautiful story of what it means to do work in excellence, I tell clients that are working, I say to them, look, a lot of times I said, you are a parallelpreneur. And that basically means that you're working a job while you're building a business. And that is perfectly okay. And I tell them, I said, your job is your investor.
Yes.
And I said, you've got to change your perspective of how you're looking at these pieces. Because once you do that, then you don't have the disdain or the frustration. Oh, God, I got to go to work. No, my investor is paying me so I can take the resources and put it towards my passion, my vision, my purpose. So looking at things differently. So helping people see that and making sure that they have the right vehicle to take them where they want to go.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. That's an amazing point of how to perceive getting up every day and going to work. Because, sometimes, especially when you are an entrepreneur and you have that free spirit about you and you want to be creative and you want to do your own thing, but your mortgage and the DWP and the gas company and the insurance company and Ralph's
Yeah,
would really like for you to have steady income. Um,
yeah.
uh, it's very difficult to see past the grind of it because you have such vision
Yeah,
for what it could be.
yeah.
But to perceive your employer as an investor, right?
Mm-hmm.
You make me think about Disney. Like I got into coaching because they certified me, and I went through all the coaching stuff for
Mm-hmm.
Disney to then start my own consulting coaching company, right? So
Absolutely.
they literally paid for my education
Mm-hmm.
and my certification. I still hated going to work every day, but I mean, I'm just kidding. It was a joy and a privilege. Uh, but that happens all the time. But
Yeah.
if we don't take advantage of those opportunities, to your
Yes.
point, I tell young folks in my church, take every class, take every certification that your job is willing to pay for,
Yes.
right? Because you could utilize those skills in a whole different place and build your own lemonade stand, after they taught you
Absolutely.
how to sell lemonade, right?
Absolutely. And I think also, and I love that you use that example because one thing that I tell people all the time is like, someone is making millions at in every single industry.
Yes.
Don't disregard the screws that hold the table together because someone right now
Yes.
is a millionaire because of those screws. I remember we got invited by a client to their home on Balboa Island. And we were there and we were walking around the area, and she had pointed to these two mansions, and she was like, "Oh, that's the family that owns baby carrots." I was like, "What?" I mean, literally these two mansions across the street from each other, and there was like a and they were absolutely gorgeous, lakefront. You could see the boats on the docks.
Baby carrots?
They were the owners of it. And I just thought to myself, this is so funny to me because there is an abundance everywhere.
Yes.
And if
Yes.
we would just see it and lean into it
Yeah.
and be open to it, there's someone making their wealth, creating their legacy in every single industry. So,
Absolutely.
whatever it is you love, whatever it is that you do, whatever it is that you're inspired by or have interest in, and it might not even, it might just be the widget or the tool
Right.
to get you to the other. But it's okay because there's opportunity in that space.
That's true. I have a boss that used to say when she got tired of going to work, she goes, "Oh, my dream job is naming nail polish." She goes, "Somebody somewhere is sitting on an island going, that looks like midnight blue. That looks like shark juice. That looks like sexy red." She's like, that's literally a job. Somebody thought, somebody has to name nail polish.
Yeah.
Right? And they're making tons of money doing it,
Absolutely.
to your point. So that's hilarious. Talk to me a little bit about your personal life, if you don't mind,
Oh,
because
absolutely.
you've been extremely successful in raising an amazingly gifted young boy who had a pretty auspicious start from
Yes.
from coming into the world where the expectation and the anticipation of what he could do and what he would be
Yes.
in other people's eyes, but
Yeah.
you saw something different. Talk
Oh
to
my
us a little bit
gosh.
about that because he's an outlier for sure.
For sure. Oh my gosh. He's our little hybrid, right?
Yeah.
His name is Andon, which is a combination of Angele and Brandon put together.
Got
So
it.
hence he's my little hybrid. But gosh, you were there
Mhm.
during that part of the journey. I just, kind of at that point in my life almost gave up. I didn't know that we would have kids. We wanted children. We just had such a rough time with pregnancy. He's the product of our seventh pregnancy. He is a surviving twin.
Mm.
When we were just on that part of the journey, I was pregnant with twin boys, and I really thought that that was our recompense. I felt like, oh, this is great. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to have these, twin boys. And early on, I started to have signs of preterm delivery, um, like I had in the past. And I just remember the doctor just saying that, the pregnancy wasn't viable. You need to get to the hospital. And when I got to the hospital, I'll never forget, when I told them what was going on, they wouldn't let me in the hospital. They said that I wasn't far enough along and that I would have to miscarry at home and that it was insane. I felt like I was in
Whew.
it was just this crazy moment.
Whole nother podcast, Black women in the medical
And
industry.
that's a whole
A
nother
whole nother thing. But go ahead.
conversation. Yeah, I got. Let me know when you want me to come because I will add to that conversation. But there I was in the lobby. They wouldn't let me in. I kept going to the desk. I kept asking for a doctor. There was an experimental cerclage that they could do at that time.
Okay.
I was further along than they normally would do
Okay.
it, but it was possible for them to do it. But the risk is that they would rupture the sac.
Got it.
So to get into the hospital, I had to agree that I would do it.
Okay.
So I figured if I just got in, that I'd be in and I could figure it out
Got
later.
it.
So I finally found a doctor that said that she would do it. I got into the hospital. I got a bed. The next day, they had scheduled the time to do the procedure. And literally, as they're wheeling me out, I said, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to risk her puncturing the sac. And so I'm just going to stay here in this bed. And after day, I don't know, 8, they sent everybody up to my room. Everybody from the the psychologist, the financial department. They're just like, your insurance.
But they can't put you out, right?
No.
It's,
And so I'm in
yeah.
there. I mean, I got a calendar next to my bed and I'm crossing off every day, just counting because I'm fighting to get to, at that point, I was about 20 weeks.
Okay.
And so I was fighting to get to 24, 26, 30, anything
Right.
to that on the side of viability. And so I'm in the hospital. I'm crossing off these days and they're literally like, we are going to send you out. And I'm in the Trans-Littenberg position. And if you know anything about that, you're in the bed with your feet in the air so that you're not putting any pressure,
Mhm.
right? So they don't even know if this is like going to work, but they're just doing everything to keep me calm and keep everything at bay as I'm slowly dilating every day. And so I'm there and I'm just telling them I'm not going anywhere. And they're just like, you're going to have to pay cash. And I was like, bill me, do what you got to do. But I'm having these babies. And so we're just in there. And literally, and this is so amazing how God works. The doctor who takes care of the NICU,
Mhm.
she has an accident and breaks her foot. And the why this is God is because I was carrying twins. I took the ratio over for the available doctors that could take care of preemies,
Okay.
much less micro preemies. So they had to transfer me to another hospital.
Right.
Now, when they transferred me to another hospital, the doctors and the staff were much more willing
Got
to
it.
do what I needed to do to protect and save this pregnancy.
Got it.
I immediately got a round of steroid shots to help develop their lungs. I immediately got the other, supplementary care that I
Yeah.
needed to make sure that I could maintain the pregnancy as long as possible. And I'm crossing off every day. So I get to 23 weeks and I end up giving birth at 23 weeks and 3 days.
Mhm.
And so I gave birth to both twins. Their AGPARs were amazing. They take them and rush them off to the NICU.
Mhm.
And I'm in a holding pattern and I am bleeding and the bleeding won't stop. And literally, I was in a holding room while they were trying to figure out how to stop the bleeding. And they did a procedure where they inflated like a balloon to try
Mhm.
to push against to stop the bleeding. And finally, it stopped after 2 days. So I hadn't even seen them.
Wow.
So I was just, there was so much trauma, so many things going on. They were coming in and bringing me pictures, but I was in this holding place and I had lost so much blood. So literally at that point, my life was at risk. They were asking for, just decisions to be made and things were going on. And fast forward, I'm in the NICU and we're in the space. Both boys are there. And about 2.5 weeks later, our youngest son passes away.
So you've only seen pictures
I've only seen pictures.
at this point in time,
Yeah.
right? Babies are in the NICU. Is your husband with them?
Yeah, he's with them. My parents are there. Just everybody's coming, when they can, but they're with them. And I am in I'm in this pre-op holding space for this procedure that I have to sign off on. So it was either do this procedure or have a hysterectomy.
Got it.
And I opted for the procedure. And the process took 3 days for them to slow down and confirm that the bleeding had stopped. And so yeah, so that happened there. I finally convinced them to wheel me in the bed, in the hospital bed, into the NICU because I have to see my boys. So I got to see them in the NICU. They were the youngest in there as micro preemies. They were born, Andon was 1 pound, 2 ounces, and Romalis was 1 pound, 3 ounces. And so they were there and just, fighting for their lives.
Yeah.
And so about 2.5 weeks later, our youngest son, Romalis, he passes away from an infection. And so they call it where he went septic because they're so small that the infection very quickly travels across his entire body. And so they couldn't catch
it.
in time. And so they immediately treated Andon for an infection, not knowing what caused it or whether or not he would get it. And so at that point, all of our attention is on Andon.
Right.
And so for the next 6 months, he had had 9 procedures. All the typical kind of mycopreemie things. His eyesight is at risk. He has retinopathy of prematurity. He has grade 3 and 4 brain bleeds. He's experiencing seizures. He has his heart is dextra position. It's rotated to the right. Just so many things were just going on, and things that we had never heard of. We didn't know. We were
These are new language.
We were like, what is this, right? And so we're just trusting the doctors and the staff, and we're trying to understand, and we're trying to be informed and make decisions. And so at that point, my whole life is everything is in this NICU. I'm living at the Ronald McDonald House. I am living, at the hospital and doing everything I can to advocate and figure out what else is needed to to help him thrive. And at the time, all the doctors were coming in and they would say, well, we don't know his quality of life. He's at risk of not being able to walk or not being able to talk or not being able to they just don't know. Even his eyesight, retinopathy of prematurity. They did laser surgery bedside to stop the the deterioration of the retina so that they could save his eyesight. And so we just didn't know what he was going to be able to see. So everything was going on with him. And we got to 6 months, and this was the kicker. We got to 6 months, and he's growing in size. He's beginning to develop, and everything is looking good. And then all of a sudden he starts to have what they call dying spells. And what would happen is he would just be there, in the incubator, and then all of a sudden he would turn blue and they'd have to resuscitate him. They didn't know why. They didn't know what was going on. And they literally wanted to train us on how to resuscitate him because they said, well, we don't know what's going on. And, maybe something is going on with his trachea, but we can't tell. They did an MRI, and they wanted to send him home that way. And I was like, oh, you're not sending this baby home.
Once again, we're not going anywhere.
You're not sending this baby home. So we had befriended everyone that we could in trying to figure out what was going on. And they had already did an MRI, and one of the doctors suggested that they do an MRA. And when they did an MRA, they discovered that because his heart was dextra position, his aorta wrapped around his trachea. And when they did the MRA, they saw that there was something pulsating, and they didn't realize that it was wrapped around it. And so when he laid on his back, it was crushing his trachea. And so now it became this bigger issue that hospital couldn't do. And so now we have to get on the cardiology wait list, which is 6 months at Children's Hospital. So I call another doctor. Because that's what we moms do.
That's what we do.
So I call another doctor, and he said, and he's at Children's Hospital. So I'm like, what do I do? The waiting list is 6 months. They already sick of me over here. I don't, what are we gonna do? And he says to me something very simple. He says, I know the cardiology wait list is 6 months, but if he's in the hospital, they're not going to deny you cardiology.
Okay.
So then I figured out, I just got to get him in the hospital.
Got it.
So I then basically rose a case that NICU could no longer support his needs,
Hmm.
and I needed to be in the NICU in Children's Hospital.
Got it.
So we get him transferred to the NICU in Children's Hospital,
Which then,
so when we get there, mind you, we've got notes everywhere. Don't put him on his back. Do this, do
hmm
that. And so me and Brandon were following the ambulance there. We get to Children's Hospital. What's the first thing they do?
put him on his back.
No one reads the note. They got him there safely. They put him on his back. We are looking on the other side of the glass, and there's a lead doctor who's there with probably, a group of other doctors, doing
Doing that thing.
doing their thing. And we're looking at them put him on his back. So he's getting ready to have one of these dying spells in
Right.
front of them. And we are yelling at the glass. We are cussing at the glass. We getting ready to fight.
Right. Yeah.
And this nurse is like, I'm going to call the police. And you know what we said? Gonna call them.
Right.
Because I said, if anything happens to them, we got him to this point, and this is going to happen here. So anyway, we acted a fool on the other side of the glass.
It's okay.
And it was absolutely fine because he had a dying spell. They resuscitated him. But guess who was there in 2 hours?
Cardiologist.
Cardiology.
Absolutely.
So, on that year, on my birthday, September 29th, 2010, Andon had a procedure called a aortopexy,
Okay.
where only he had less than a dozen had been done in the country. They basically lifted the aorta and attached it they were supposed to attach it to the sternum wall, but Andon also had Poland syndrome, so he was missing a pectoral muscle,
Okay.
so they didn't even know what they were going to attach it to.
Wow.
So they remove it from surrounding the the other spaces, and so they go in, they do the procedure, and literally in 2 weeks, it was like he was a brand new baby.
Wow.
They said they didn't know if it was going to help. They didn't know what it was going to do. After 3 weeks, he no longer was on oxygen. And about 5 weeks from that point, he came home. And when he came home, I can tell you that he has never went back to stay in the hospital again.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And if anyone were to see him, as handsome as he is, as charming as he is, they would never know that that's the origin of that story.
Yeah.
But what you talked about was persistence and the journey of fighting, right, for love,
Yeah.
right, and life, and not being afraid to be an advocate
Yeah.
for that which you know is right.
Yeah.
Even in the face of call the police.
Absolutely.
Call the police, but we're gonna get this done,
Yeah.
right? And that's the tenacity that so many people relinquish,
It is.
right?
And
Because
I think
we don't think we can win,
And I also think it's because in advocacy, you think that you have to have all the answers.
and you don't.
And you do not.
You don't.
We had no idea what it was like to have a micropreemie. We had no idea as he got older what it meant to navigate IEPs or any of the
Right.
things that he needed. But what we do know is that he deserves access to the best that can be gotten. So
Right.
what does that look like?
Right.
And so if you just know enough and base it on love, you can advocate for anyone to get anything.
Well, there you go. There
Yeah.
you go. An amazing story. Thank you for sharing. I know that's quite personal, and so thank you for somebody listening needed to hear that
Yeah.
so that they could push through and advocate for themselves or for somebody that they love.
Yes.
And you can do it. You can
Absolutely.
absolutely do it and have an amazing outcome where you can look at a miracle every single solitary day. Right?
Absolutely.
Thank you for doing the podcast. I'm so grateful that you took the time. I learned so much. I've heard you speak a couple different times, but I didn't know half of this. I'm gonna call you gang woman from now on.
Oh, no, new nicknames.
When people come messing, I'm like, you better watch out. I got a gang friend, you know. But thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for the advocacy that you have for people and companies.
Yes.
And I remember when you came to Unstuck and the conference that I have, and just helped a business get off the ground. You know what I mean? And just helping people see the value in themselves.
Yes.
That the narrative that I'm not in, or I don't have it, or I can't do it, or whatever,
Yeah.
is really just a narrative that's untrue.
Absolutely.
That if you just put one foot forward, and really act on the idea or the passion or the vision that you have, that you really can accomplish amazing things, and people's lives can be impacted. Companies can be born, right?
Absolutely.
And businesses can flourish when we just put our minds to it and ignore the negative narrative.
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you for holding this space for so many.
absolutely.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
work
it's my
that you do
pleasure.
is amazing.
It's my pleasure. It really is. So, family, Evolving Outlier, Miss Angele Cade, I hope you've enjoyed today's session. I hope there's somebody out there who's listening. Um, I hope there's a mom out there somewhere who heard today and is inspired to continue advocating and pushing because there's victory on the other side of your push. So, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. This is the Evolving Outlier, and we'll see you all next week.